Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, October 24, 1942, around 2200 hours. The suffocating darkness of the Solomon Islands swallows the edges of the airfield. Private Robert Young Deere of the 164th Infantry Regiment checks his M1 Garand one final time. His unit arrived on the island only 11 days ago, on October 13th, becoming the first U.S. Army formation to take part in offensive operations against the Japanese here. In positions beside Marines still carrying bolt-action Springfield rifles, the soldiers of the 164th gripped their semi-automatic weapons, 8 rounds locked into each en-bloc clip. The humidity is crushing, the jungle is alive with insects, and then, through that noise, comes a sound that freezes the blood of every American on the line. A mass of Japanese infantry surges forward, shouting "Banzai" and "Totsugeki" at the top of their lungs. Among them, Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto of the 29th Infantry Regiment pushes his platoon ahead. In his hands is a Type 38 Arisaka rifle, its exceptionally long barrel awkward and unwieldy in thick undergrowth. 5 rounds sit in its internal magazine, each shot requiring the same sequence: up, back, forward, down. Behind him, newer troops carry the Type 99 rifle, chambered for the more powerful 7.7 by 58 mm cartridge, but it is still bolt action, still 5 rounds, still the same mechanical limitation. What happens over the next 12 hours of savage combat will demonstrate something the Japanese never anticipated. American infantry, armed with the semi-automatic M1 Garand, possesses a decisive advantage in firepower. And in the Pacific War, that difference, multiplied across thousands of engagements, will be as decisive as any doctrine, any tactic, or any heroic last stand. This battle at Henderson Field reveals a hard truth of industrial war. Courage matters, determination matters, but the arithmetic of firepower can decide who lives and who dies. The technological gap between the M1 Garand and the bolt-action Arisaka rifles is not a small difference, it is a gulf, one that will echo from Guadalcanal to New Guinea, from Saipan to Peleliu, from Iwo Jima to Okinawa. And it begins with a rifle. The M1 Garand came from the mind of Canadian-American designer John C. Garand, who began work at Springfield Armory in 1919. It took 17 years of development, testing, and refinement before the U.S. Army officially adopted the rifle on January 9, 1936. That decision made America the first nation to issue a semi-automatic rifle as a standard infantry weapon. The rifle fired the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, launching a 150-grain M2 ball projectile at roughly 2,850 feet per second from its 24-inch barrel, generating about 2,656 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. But the genius of the Garand wasn't just the cartridge, it was the mechanism. A gas-operated rotating bolt system tapped propellant near the muzzle and drove an operating rod that cycled the action automatically. Each pull of the trigger fired 1 round, ejected the spent casing, and chambered the next, without the shooter ever working a bolt. A trained soldier could fire 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute. In the same time, a skilled bolt-action rifleman might manage 15 to 20. And when the Garand's 8 rounds were gone, a practiced rifleman could reload in under 3 seconds, dropping in a fresh en-bloc clip from the top and snapping the rifle back into action. The M1's development wasn't painless. Early prototypes used unreliable systems. The rifle was originally designed for a different cartridge, the .276 Pedersen. In 1932, General Douglas MacArthur intervened, insisting the Army keep the .30-06 round to use existing ammunition stockpiles. That decision delayed production, but it also ensured the Garand carried a powerful cartridge with excellent range and stopping power. Now look at what Japan carried into the same war. The Arisaka rifle family traced back to Colonel Nariakira Arisaka's Type 30 design of 1897. By World War II, Japanese forces primarily fielded two variants, the Type 38, adopted in 1905, and the Type 99, introduced in 1939. The Type 38 fired the 6.5 by 50 mm cartridge, a 139-grain bullet at roughly 2,500 feet per second, producing around 1,650 foot-pounds of energy. The Type 99 fired the heavier 7.7 by 58 mm cartridge, a 182-grain bullet at roughly 2,400 feet per second, producing around 2,300 foot-pounds. Both rifles were bolt-action, fed from 5-round internal magazines loaded via stripper clips. The Type 38's extreme length, over 50 inches overall, with a barrel longer than 31 inches, gave it excellent long-range accuracy. But in jungle combat, where fights often took place inside 100 yards, that length became a liability. It snagged on vegetation, it was slow to maneuver, it was awkward inside bunkers and trenches. And most of all, it could not deliver volume of fire. The Arisaka action was strong. Post-war testing showed it could be stronger than many Western bolt actions. It had an innovative safety mechanism and gas escape features designed to protect the shooter. But none of that could overcome the basic fact that in modern combat, rate of fire matters. Production tells the story of industrial war as clearly as any battle report. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories produced roughly 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory alone produced about 3.5 million. Winchester contributed over 500,000, and by mid-1943, virtually every American infantryman and Marine in the Pacific carried a semi-automatic rifle. Japan produced millions of rifles too, roughly 3 million Type 38s and around 3.5 million Type 99s across multiple arsenals, including factories in Japan and occupied territories. But Japan never achieved the consistent production quality and modernization rate needed to shift their infantry away from bolt-action limitations. American M1 Garand production maintained consistent quality through strict inspection and parts interchangeability. A damaged Garand could often be repaired in the field with parts from other rifles. Finishes evolved for practicality. Parkerizing replaced bluing for corrosion resistance in tropical climates. Wood stocks shifted as materials changed, but reliability remained. Japanese manufacturing quality deteriorated sharply as the war dragged on. Early Type 99 rifles included advanced features: chrome-lined barrels, dust covers, even anti-aircraft sights and monopods. But by 1944 and 1945, last-ditch rifles appeared with rough machining, simplified sights, poor wood quality, and minimal finishing. Japan's industry was being strangled. Materials were scarce, skilled labor was gone. The war was grinding down the quality of everything. In combat, the M1's advantages went far beyond rate of fire. After each shot, the shooter maintained his sight picture. The rifle cycled itself. Target reacquisition was faster. Follow-up shots were easier and more accurate. The rifle could function in mud, sand, ash, and heavy fouling. And the N-block clip system, often mocked for its distinctive ping when it ejected, was actually one of the fastest reload systems of the war. The clip ejection also gave immediate confirmation the rifle was empty, no guesswork, no hesitation. By contrast, every bolt-action shot broke rhythm. Up, back, forward, down. Even a skilled rifleman needed 2 to 3 seconds per cycle under fire. Reloading via stripper clips often took 5 to 7 seconds, longer in chaos, darkness, or awkward positions. Magazine capacity made the gap wider, 5 rounds versus 8. To fire the same number of rounds, Japanese soldiers had to reload more often, and each reload took longer. The ammo situation added another layer. American forces standardized on .30-06 for rifles, machine guns, and automatic rifles, simplifying logistics. American ammunition production was enormous, backed by factories capable of producing hundreds of millions of rounds. Japan faced 2 rifle calibers in widespread use, 6.5 mm and 7.7 mm, creating constant logistical friction. There were documented cases of units receiving the wrong ammunition type, rendering rifles useless. Then came Guadalcanal. When the 164th Infantry Regiment arrived on October 13, 1942, the Marines noticed immediately. These Army soldiers carried M1 Garands. During the climactic battle for Henderson Field on October 24th to 25th, the advantages became undeniable. Private First Class James Cass of Company M later recalled that the Japanese came in waves, barely visible in the darkness except for bayonets catching faint light. With Garands, the Americans could put 8 rounds into charging men before they crossed 30 yards. Each soldier became a base of fire, like a small machine gun position. No bolt, no broken sight picture, just squeeze, boom, 8 times, then a fast reload and 8 more. The 164th semi-automatic fire helped stabilize positions that were close to failing. Colonel Bryant Moore reported his men expended over 250,000 rounds of .30-06 ammunition in 2 days. Japanese bodies piled up in front of those positions. Japanese survivors wrote about it later. Sergeant Masao Watanabe described charging into what felt like a wall of lead. Their officers had promised spirit would overcome American machines. Instead, every American seemed to fire like an automatic weapon. In the time it took a Japanese soldier to fire, work the bolt, and fire again, Americans had already fired 4 or 5 rounds. That is what semi-automatic firepower does in close combat. At Cape Gloucester in December 1943, Marines equipped with Garands fought in rain and mud that ruined equipment. The Garand kept firing. At Peleliu in July 1944, the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War, over 3,000 Japanese soldiers collapsed under the continuous roar of semi-automatic rifles. At Peleliu, Japanese forces shifted to fortified defense instead of mass charges, but even then, bolt-action rifles struggled to match American ability to suppress cave mouths and firing ports with volume of accurate rifle fire. American Doctrine trained soldiers and Marines to exploit the M1, rapid, aimed fire, not wasteful spraying, but controlled volume. Training time and ammunition allocation were generous. Soldiers fired hundreds of rounds during qualification and many more in unit training. Combat units drilled until reloads and sight recovery were automatic. Japanese infantry training emphasized precision and discipline, rooted in the philosophy of one shot, one kill, Ichigeki Hisatsu. That philosophy was partly cultural, partly practical. A bolt-action rifle almost forces that mindset. But against the Garand, it was a deadly disadvantage. The sound of massed M1 fire became a psychological weapon. The rapid, rhythmic crack, punctuated by the metallic ping of ejecting clips, created the illusion of machine guns everywhere. Japanese documents instructed troops not to be discouraged by the volume of American fire. But volume of fire was not fear, it was physics. At the squad level, the numbers became overwhelming. A U.S. rifle squad of 12 men, 10 with M1 Garands and 2 with Browning automatic rifles, could deliver roughly 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute in sustained fire. A comparable Japanese squad with bolt-action rifles might manage 150 to 180 under ideal conditions. That disparity changed tactics. American squads could lay suppressive fire with one element while another maneuvered. Japanese squads struggled to suppress and move at the same time because working bolts and reloading constantly breaks momentum. At company level, the effect was crushing. During the Henderson Field fighting, Company G of the 164th reportedly expended around 30,000 rounds in one night, about 150 rounds per man, yet suffered comparatively light casualties. The math was brutal. A Japanese battalion charging across open ground faced American companies capable of putting thousands of aimed rounds downrange every minute. Even accounting for darkness and confusion, that volume created kill zones courage could not cross. Japan recognized the problem, too late. They attempted to increase infantry firepower with weapons like the Type 100 submachine gun, but production numbers were far too small to matter strategically. They even tried to copy the M1 Garand itself. When American forces captured Japanese facilities in 1945, they found the Type 4 rifle program, reverse-engineered from captured Garands and chambered for Japanese ammunition. But Japan could not mass-produce it. They had parts for only a few hundred rifles and assembled barely more than 100. Industrial infrastructure, not just design skill, decided what could be fielded. Now consider the energy and firepower in cold terms. The M1 Garand's 30-06 round delivered about 2,656 foot-pounds at the muzzle. At 40 rounds per minute, that is over 100,000 foot-pounds of energy delivered per minute. A bolt-action Type 99 firing the 7.7mm round at 15 rounds per minute delivered roughly one-third of that. And at typical Pacific combat distances, often inside 300 yards, American rounds retained enough energy to penetrate vegetation and light cover effectively. Japanese commanders understood eventually.
By 1944, Japanese doctrine warned that American automatic rifle fire created an impenetrable wall during daylight, and that attacks must be conducted at night or in bad weather. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi at Iwo Jima specifically rejected Banzai charges as wasteful against American firepower. He chose defense in depth instead. It prolonged battles, but it did not change the outcome. Okinawa in 1945 became the ultimate test. 180,000 American troops fought 120,000 Japanese defenders in the bloodiest Pacific battle. Japanese forces avoided mass charges until one major counteroffensive. On May 4, 1945, 5,000 Japanese soldiers attacked under artillery cover. They met American fire. 8 shots, ping, reload, 8 more. Bolt actions fired once, maybe twice, and then the semi-automatic wall cut them down. The assault collapsed with horrific losses. And when Japanese soldiers reached American lines, the Garand's close-range firepower advantage became even more decisive, because in chaos, speed and sustained fire keep people alive. Planning for the invasion of Japan, Operation Downfall assumed enormous firepower requirements. U.S. production schedules called for hundreds of thousands of replacement rifles and staggering ammunition consumption. The atomic bombs ended the war before that invasion happened, but post-war analysis suggested casualties could have reached catastrophic levels. Even then, the Garand's advantage would have mattered, because firepower changes what small units can do. After the war, the M1 Garand influenced rifle development worldwide. Semi-automatic service rifles became the standard. In a historical irony, the United States later equipped Japan's self-defense forces with M1 Garands in the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had once faced the weapon now trained with it. Today, both rifles are prized by collectors. Arisaka rifles, especially those with intact imperial chrysanthemum markings, are valuable artifacts. The Garand's distinctive ping is iconic, featured in films, games, and military lore. General George S. Patton called the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. For the Pacific War infantryman, that wasn't poetry, it was arithmetic. Because in the final analysis, the Pacific War was won not by one rifle or one battle, but by the cumulative power of American industrial capacity and technological advantage. And at the individual soldier level, the M1 Garand was one of the clearest symbols of that advantage. 8 rounds, 1 pull of the trigger each, fast reload, continuous aimed fire. Against it, the bolt-action Arisaka, strong, accurate, well-made, was still fighting the last war with last war's technology. On that October night at Henderson Field, when thousands of Americans squeezed triggers and rifles cycled themselves, the lesson was written in sound. The crack of semi-automatic fire and the ping that signaled it was time to reload and continue. Not spirit, not slogans, mechanics, precision, and the unstoppable arithmetic of firepower.